Kyle Pitts could learn a thing or two by watching Alge Crumpler. We're talking about why the Falcons' legendary tight end was Michael Vick's favorite target.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. Sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, been covering the Falcons for most of one of our guests' entire lifetime, formerly at FalconsFans.com, RIP. And I appreciate each and every one of you that has been an everydayer of this podcast that makes it your first watch or first listen each and every day. All you got to do to become an everydayer, subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today's episode is another one of our Falcons historian player shootouts. We are now thick of it in round two. We've whittled down half the field, and now only the true winners are coming out, and they're going head to head to answer trivia questions from myself and my co-host Allen Strk, a contributor at the Falcoholic, the former co-host of Locked On Falcons and the Falcons Fans podcast, RIP, right? And we asked these guys questions about a Falcons legendary player from the last 20 years and part of this summer-long trivia tournament to see who can answer, random trivia facts about various random Falcon players, the best in a series of matchups. And today's episode is one, as Alan has said, no one can say a bad word about. He said a lot of bad words about a former Falcons head coach in 2007, which we all appreciated him coming out and saying it, and it meant something. But this is none other than Algernon Darius Crumpler, the Falcons' legendary tight end that would only be surpassed by Tony Gonzalez several years as one of the great tight ends of all time. And we'll be asking our two guests, Daniel Flick and Will McFadden, questions about him. Daniel, who upset Dave Choate, the Falcoholic legend himself, in round one. Daniel covers the Falcons for Sports Illustrated, Fan Nation. Will McFadden, former contributor at the Falcoholic, former host of Believe in Falcons podcast, but now the senior editor and staff writer over at AtlantaFalcons.com, back in the fold. And Will, used to work at AtlantaFalcons.com, not that long ago to cover Alge Crumpler, but certainly covered a lot of great players in Atlanta and will continue to do so in the future. But guys, welcome back to another Falcons historian player shootout. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, man. I don't know if I should be proud or offended by the comment that you had about me not being born when he was drafted. I mean, it's true. Sometimes the truth hurts, and it's probably puts me at a slight I don't want to say okay. I don't feel like I'm a big underdog, right? I feel like against Dave I was. Against Will, the age gap probably isn't as big. I love you, Dave, if you're watching this. We're gonna see. I still think Will probably has a little bit of an edge on me. But you know what? I'm feeling great. I'm truly having a great day, great night, high energy, enthused. Potentially, I don't want to project what my round will look like. I came in last time hoping to get at least one or two and not get shut out. We're going to see what tonight holds. We're going to see. I'm not going to set a bar. Actually, I will set a bar. I think 1.5 over under is a good line for me.
Wow.
I think I get the over. Maybe 2.5 is a more fair line. We're going to see. We're going to see. But long story short, I'm feeling good. I'm thrilled to be here.
We'll see if we can get some FanDuel odds for that over at FanDuel Sportsbook.
I just want to mention to Dale quickly. There's two things Aaron does not shy away from: age jokes and chubby running back jokes. So just be mindful.
It's my two favorite things. It's my two favorite things. I will run those jokes into the ground, and I will not apologize for it. Eddie Lacy. But that being said, let's talk about Alge Crumpler, a player that is one of the great tight ends of all time in Atlanta Falcons history. Will, we'll start with you. What sort of memories do you have of Alge Crumpler?
Well, unlike the historian infant over here, I did watch Alge Crumpler play. He was my favorite player growing up because, again, I loved Michael Vick, and he was the only person that could catch a pass from Michael Vick. So, like, the good things that happened for the Atlanta Falcons passing offense always involved number 83. I also happened to play tight end. So, again, I was just kind of glued to Alge Crumpler. A lot of great memories watching him play. The all black uniforms from like 2003, 2004. I just can picture a Monday Night Football game, Mike Vick, bootleg, rolling out left, hitting Alge kind of in the flat, turns up field, scores a touchdown. Just, I feel like that is vintage Falcons football to me. So yeah, it's really, I'm excited to get the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite players tonight.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the connection that he had with Michael Vick, because I think you're onto something. Because I looked up the numbers. I won't be asking. I don't think I'm asking questions about this later in the episode. But Alge was very explosive for a tight end. I think the 17, 20-plus yard plays he had in 2004 still is the most of any tight end that the Falcons have had, at least going back to like the 90s or whatever, when we have play-by-play data. Even more so than the 16 that Kyle Pitts had in his rookie season. And a lot of that came from, to me, what the Falcons offense was in the heyday of those Vick years, which was, running the football. And then when they needed to throw the football, it was just basically drop back to throw. Michael Vick would not hang in the pocket. He would just sort of roll to his left and then sort of off structure, heave up a ball down the field. And as you said, Will, Crumpler was often on the receiving end of that. The other player that was often on the receiving end of that was Brian Finneran. And we know that Brian Finneran's superpower, being a 6'5" wide receiver, was winning those sort of jump balls. And there's a big reason why the Falcons weren't really great at developing wide receivers during that time, because it was just like, you kind of need, with wide receivers, timing and route running and all that stuff. That got thrown all out the window with Michael.
I also think Vic just threw a freaking laser beam that like nobody could hold on to.
Yeah, but like that's the thing about Alge. I'm sorry, where Alge was good at the sort of broken plays when you needed him to break open and just go get the football, and he was also really good at the sort of precision plays that if you just needed a guy to run down the field and separate, he was also capable of doing that as well as being the sort of complete tight end, because he was also a very impact blocker and was able, even when he wasn't as effective as a receiver at the end of his Falcons career, and would play a couple of more years in Tennessee and New England, primarily because they knew how dominant a blocker he would be at the point of attack. And he was a big reason why that run game was so effective during that year. So he was kind of a triple threat in terms of whatever you needed from Alge Crumpler. He was able to provide that pretty consistently throughout his time in Atlanta. Of course, not to throw shade at anybody, but that's kind of what the Falcons are hoping from Kyle Pitts, and we'll see if Kyle Pitts can turn into that triple threat. But I think Alge was kind of that all in one player, for the Falcons during his heyday.
Daniel, we got to ask you. I know this is a bit of a awkward fit given the age difference, but from doing your extensive research about Alge Crumpler and just knowing how much people hold him in a high regard, what have you discovered about him, and have you gained a lot more admiration for him?
Yeah, I think I'm glad, Aaron, that you mentioned Kyle Pitts, because I think that was when my appreciation for Alge really came to be, was just like when Pitts was kind of in the midst of his really strong rookie year, and then the years that followed that, just kind of researching where some of his numbers ranked all time among players at the position in franchise history. That's kind of when I started to realize, like, okay, I didn't watch Alge Crumpler play, but I still thought, like, okay, this guy was legit. And I think it's been a real thrill for me, honestly, kind of researching him the last few days ahead of this, and like seeing some of the things he's accomplished, learning more about his play style. Very, very interesting player who I wish I was around to have watched. I also want to say, Will, very big fan of the, was it the History Infant?
Yep.
Sure. I like that one. Let me counter History Ancestor. I like that.
Okay.
I probably not good, but I don't know.
If only you went up against Matt Chernoff, who we just had on in the last episode, or Dave. Dave actually could suit that as well. See, Aaron, there's people older than you in this tournament.
Are there? Are they really? I don't think Dave's older than me.
Oh, dang. I just aged Dave. See, now I'm going to get heat for this. I think one of my favorite things about Alge is just not only was he the security blanket and the downfield threat, but we got to mention his toughness. And, of course, the play that stands out, NFC Championship game 2004. Brian Dawkins took his soul, but he didn't take the ball away. The ball remained in Alge's hands. That's still one of the most jaw-dropping moments I think I've seen, period, in football. It's just one of those moments you can't believe a human being actually held on to the ball, because the timing of the hit, the ferocity, we know how special Brian Dawkins is. The fact that Crumpler still held on to it was just unreal. And I think 2004 was, of course, a special year for Falcons, but he made a bunch of plays downfield, and he just always knew how to use that big frame of his. Like of course, he has the size. He's very agile, and he just knew how to box out safeties. He knew how to create enough separation against linebackers. Great in the red zone. Like, you watch his highlights, the majority of his touchdowns come in the red zone, and you would expect that from a tight end. But Crumpler, it seemed like more times than not, it just seems like he was in perfect position. Like, he wasn't relying on the most accurate balls by Nick. Of course, Vick threw a fastball, as Will mentioned beforehand. But I just think Alge was just always precise, and he just knew how to use his frame. And he's kind of a cheat code at times, especially in that 2004 season. So, phenomenal player, one of those Falcons that you just truly got to love. And it was cool just the fact that, he actually had a really strong run. Like, I know some people say, oh, longevity, but tight ends don't have that big of a run. So I think in the mid-2000s, you put him up there with a couple of great tight ends. I'm not going to name all of them because we got some questions about them, but I think you got a good handle, because the mid-2000s I would consider kind of glory years for tight ends. And you definitely put Crumpler 5th or 6th on that list.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I, my brain wants to start rattling off names, but as you said, Alan, we got some questions for these guys that may involve one or two names off of that list. So we will leave that aside. And I think it's time to jump into the question and answer period. And Alan, I don't know if we discussed this beforehand, but who's up first?
Well, we definitely gotta go Will, who's considered the favorite here. We will start with Will, but Aaron, I feel like you haven't spoken enough about Crumpler, man. It's one of your guys. You want to talk about any moments?
No, there's nothing specific. Like when I Googled, or when I searched on YouTube for Crumpler stuff, like that Brian Dawkins hit came up so many times in the search bar, and I just had to watch it like 15 times, and it took me back to being drunk on my couch in 2005 in college, thinking that the Falcons were gonna sort of go to the Super Bowl, and then that hit happened, and it was just like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna go the way that I thought it was going to go, and being very disappointed for that. But other than that, like specific moments for Alge Crumpler, no, there weren't really too many that sort of stand out in terms of it was just an old reliable player. But like in terms of specific moments, I don't really have too many memories from 20 plus years ago.
I love the fact that back in 2005 you were a super optimistic fan. If only we could get that back somehow.
Yeah, I lost some brain cells, due to alcohol in college, so I got him back. And
there we go. Also, last thing, Will, I forgot. Did you write a story on him, or did you interview him? I remember it was something you mentioned. Especially.
Well, no. So I interviewed him for a class project in like elementary school or middle school. It may have been 6th grade. Yeah. So my dad worked at a radio station, so set it up through the sports station at the time. It was just like a class project where I got to it was basically like talk to somebody in a career that you like admire. So I thought it would be cool to talk to a pro football player, set it up. He was super cool. I remember one of his answers. It was just like, what's something about being in the NFL that like is bad? It was a poorly phrased question, but I was like, I don't know, 12 at the time, cut me some slack. And he said that, losing players, losing teammates to like trade, free agency, things like that, because I guess the Falcons had just parted ways with Patrick Kearney that offseason. And he was like, Patrick Kearney was a really, really close friend and mentor of mine for like 5 seasons, and he's no longer here. And it's like, I really miss my buddy in the locker room. And I was like, okay, next question. And now looking back, I'm like, that was a great answer. And like, definitely was like pulling back the curtain, probably revealing a little bit of the human behind the player. But nah, I didn't have the tact at the time to follow up with that. But yeah, that he was a really, really cool guy.
Awesome story. Hey, man, you learned journalism chops at a young age, at least. That's one takeaway from it.
I tried. I wasn't good, but I don't know if I'm still good anyway.
You're
always trying, though.
And we can't forget that Will did set the tone in the first round, only person to get 5 in a row. So let's see if he could do it again.
Let's see.
Oh my God.
Alan said we'll be putting Will McFadden on the hot seat. Alan will be asking him questions as we continue today's Locked On Falcons historian player shootout on Alge Crumpler. Guys, in the NFL, you want to find quality professionals to hire to boost your team. And the same is true if you run a small business, and that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. If only there was a LinkedIn for the NFL, because LinkedIn has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just any old job board. LinkedIn's going to help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a job, but just might be open for the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
First question. Which season did Crumpler have the most receiving yards in his career?
2005.
That is correct. In the Falcons' memorable 2004 season, Crumpler scored a game-winning touchdown against this NFC opponent. Name the team.
Was it the Giants?
Nope, it was the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, it was like 40 seconds left. Vick hit him right in the back corner. One of my favorite plays in that season. Question 3. Crumpler only had one 100-yard game. It was also a multi-touchdown game in 2006. Name the team.
2006?
Yeah, so he scored two touchdowns.
Pittsburgh.
You got it, yeah. Probably one of the best moments from that season. God, that game was a classic. Question 4. Crumpler's longest career reception came from a pass by a quarterback not named Mike Vick. Who was the quarterback?
Doug Johnson.
Wow, there we go. I thought I was going to stump you with that one. Very impressive. 2003, and that's the only thing we'll talk about when it comes to 2003. Actually, 2003 will briefly come up here. Crumpler earned his place in the Pro Bowl 4 consecutive years from 2003 to 2006. Who were the 2 other tight ends that earned their place in the Pro Bowl 3 times in the NFC? So you got to name the 2 tight ends that, alongside Crumpler, were kind of at the peak at that time, making the Pro Bowl.
Jeremy Shockey and Jason Witten.
That's correct. Well done. 4 out of 5. Strong.
Ooh, damn. I was really wondering if it was going to be Chris Cooley.
Oh, that is a good one.
And I was like, I think it's Jason Witten. Yeah.
Man, people forgot how good Shockey was. I know he turned a lot of people off with his antics and mouth, but man,
and he was still with the Giants at that point. Yeah. Yeah.
I knew you were going to get Witten, but I was like, maybe you forgot about Shockey. But no, Shockey was a beast. Daniel, do you remember Jeremy Shockey?
I do. I remember the name, not much about him. Some of the polls that Will had there were unbelievable. I want to say I knew about 2 or 3 of those. This might be a short one, Aaron. I'm not sure.
Well, you're going to get all 5 questions, but how competitive it will be, we'll see. But you'll get your opportunity for all 5 questions.
Okay. So yeah, we'll give Daniel that opportunity to be competitive as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Guys, summertime is great for a lot of things, but it's not always great when it comes to sports, especially now that, Stanley Cup, NBA playoffs, all that's done. baseball's still doing its thing, but FanDuel's here to keep the party going, right? Sports aren't sporting like they used to. And if you head on over to FanDuel right now this summer, they're going to hook you up, all of their customers, with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just head over to FanDuel.com to start making the most out of your summer. And if you're looking forward to the fall, check out the season bets, the over-under for Falcons win totals, how many tutties, how many yards Kirk Cousins going to have. You could do over-unders for Bijan, Drake, and Kyle, all at FanDuel.com to make the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Alge Crumpler's longest career touchdown catch was also his first, scoring from 57 yards against the New Orleans Saints during his rookie season. Who threw that ball?
Chris Chandler.
That is correct. Okay, off to a good start. Number 2, Crumpler's last multi-touchdown game came in his final one as a Falcon in 2007 versus this memorable opponent in a season-ending win that also marked the only win of Chris Redman's tenure in Atlanta. Who was the opponent?
Yeah. Of all the things I remember from 07, this is not one of the ones that's popping up on my head. Tampa Bay.
That is incorrect. It is the Seattle Seahawks. Speaking of Patrick Kearney, that was his return to Atlanta. Number 3, name the only season where Alge Crumpler had 2 or more 100-yard games.
04.
That is correct. You got to get both of these correct in order to advance, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see.
No pressure.
Force overtime.
Yeah. Yes, the force overtime. Duh. Number 4, Crumpler had more receiving yards versus this team than any other while in a Falcons uniform with 580. Who was the team?
I'm going to go back to the well and say Tampa Bay.
That is incorrect. It is the Carolina Panthers.
Oh, okay. I want to say that the most yards he had in a game was against Tampa Bay. So in my head, I was like,
That may be correct. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, last question, just for S's and G's, as they say. The draft selection of Crumpler was not initially popular due to the Falcons having used a premium pick 2 years earlier on another tight end. That selection involved the team trading their first-round pick in 2000 to move up into round 2 in 1999 to select this tight end. Who was that tight end?
oh, man. The Allen Strk head shake when that question was asked means there was probably something.
The answer is going to be disgusting. This is a shameful question. When I saw this, I was absolutely appalled by it.
Look, I wanted to make Daniel earn this win if he was going to beat someone like Will. So,
Try to ponder this. I actually was looking at the tight ends on the roster from prior to his arrival, so I should really know this. I got nothing. I'm tapping out. I got nothing.
Will, do you know the answer to this question?
Nah, I'm that depraved.
Okay. The answer is Reggie Kelly.
Yeah. Ugh. Top 10 Aaron's most hated players. He just had to get him in there. There's not many more players Aaron has been critical over his life.
Look, anytime we do one of these Falcon things, Reggie Kelly is going to come up. I promise you that. So
he did have a long career, though, didn't he?
He did. He went to Cincinnati for a couple of years, and then he came back in 2011, I think, for the Falcons. So, yeah, he wound up playing 12 seasons, I think, in the NFL.
Yeah, if he was drafted 2 years before Alge was and then played till 2011, that's a long time.
Yeah. But people weren't fans of the Crumpler pick because it was like, how many tight ends can one coach draft? Dan Reeves was the proto Arthur Smith for those of you guys. So
that might be the only time Dan Reeves and Arthur Smith are in the same sentence.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about Crumpler, and it's like that 04 Falcons offense is basically what Arthur Smith dreamed that he could make the Falcons offense in recent years to be, with the run game and the tight end leading the passing attack, a big jump ball receiver in Brian Finner and all that stuff. So it was basically what the 2023 Falcons were supposed to be.
Not dissimilar.
You made a very convincing case there. If only Mike Mularkey was the offensive coordinator at that time. He just missed out a couple years.
All right. So obviously we'll be advancing. Daniel, it was a valiant effort for you, especially given that we gave you two players that you weren't necessarily as familiar with due to your youth, but you did an excellent job. It shows the power of studying, and doing your homework really pays off for you to make it as far as you did. I'm sure you are very happy with your finish, but I'll give you the floor if you have any comments.
Yeah, I mean, as always, really appreciate the opportunity. I feel like I fought well. That line I said of 1.5, in my head, I was like, I'll probably hit the over on that, but I thought 2 was probably the most likely outcome. That's what I got. Some pretty good polls for me. I think like pulling Chris Chandler for me was a very, very big pull. I was very proud of that one. But it was a bit of an uphill climb, but you know what? I had the resources at my hand to where I probably could have maybe pulled a few more out of that. But you know what? Will, phenomenal opponent. I mean, I'm glad I lost to someone who's now, I guess, 9 out of 10 through 2 rounds. And I would imagine the championship favorite as we sit here today. So, you know what, man? I'm rooting for you. I'll be that guy who says that I want the guy who beat me to ultimately win it all. And you know what? If you win it all, lunch on me and Flowery Branch in a week and a half.
Ooh, I love that. Thank you, buddy. Okay. Yeah, no, it was honestly, it was a pleasure to compete against you. Iron sharpens iron, as they always say. And that's probably hopefully the last time that we will hear that cliche throughout training camp. But it won't be. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to seeing you up there in Flowery Branch, to getting to cover the team with you during training camp. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait. I know the fan base won't get to be up there, but that's just going to make our job kind of like that much more, I think, pressure filled, but like fun and important. And it's going to be unique. It's going to feel kind of unlike any other training camp. So yeah, it was a blast again to do this with you, Daniel. Allen, Aaron, thank you so much for having me on. But yeah, can't wait for the weeks and the months to come, guys. The season is here. Yeah. So a big change to some of the Atlanta Falcons training camp content programming of years past is that we will have a much more in-depth podcast strategy this year. So be on the lookout for podcasts every single day after practice. We will break down what we've seen. You guys can find that anywhere you get your podcast. Check out the YouTube channel as well. There's going to be awesome video content, a lot of exclusive stuff over at atlantafalcons.com. And then, all the editorial stuff we can think of and figure out. There's going to be a lot of different storylines, really, really interesting, I think, angles early in training camp. And then who knows where things will go from there. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, like I said.
I see your everyday podcast. I wonder where you got that idea from.
I know, right? Hey, you gotta copy the best to stick with the best, right?
Yeah. Your team every day. Daniel, what do you have in store for the people starting next week with training camp?
Yeah, it'll be a lot of written content. The plan for me probably have a practice recap each day. I want it to be about as in-depth as I can write it, but as much as like I feel like I have a very interesting brain where it's like I find the smallest things fascinating, and I'm just planning on pouring all of that out so that everyone can read about the 8th string linebacker who won't make the roster, but he was on whatever for the day. So there you go. As I mentioned last pod, very sicko behavior, but that's awesome. And then also I love storytelling. And so I'm excited to head back to Flowery Branch and learn more about each individual player's stories and write however many of those I feel like other people might want to read. I really enjoyed that part of OTAs and have been able to, write a few of those this summer as well throughout the break period. And I'm very excited to have a fresh slate of content and kind of learn more about these players and then help other people learn more about them as well through whatever I may write. So very exciting time. Very, very excited and cannot wait to head back to Sorry, Ranch.
Well, I am definitely one of those sickos that enjoys the 8th string linebacker conversation. That's all I want to talk about. Like, okay, Kirk Cousins, whatever. Can we really talk about what, Donovan Mooten is doing, at the linebacker position? But that is just me, But for all you fellow sickos, make sure you check out Daniel's stuff, over at si.com. But go ahead.
I just want to let Will know. So semifinal, we don't know your opponent yet, but we do know the player you will be quizzed on. You will be quizzed on Julio Jones.
Let's go.
Superstar.
Let's do it.
It's superstar time. Now it's a big time. So that'll happen in a few weeks. But yeah, that's gonna be a special episode. And you're gonna have over a decade's worth to prepare for, given Julio's illustrious career, as Aaron likes to say.
There you go.
It's gonna be very exciting.
Branding is strong. So, guys, that's going to do it for us here. Appreciate all of you that tune in for Locked On Falcons as your first listen. And tomorrow, your first listen, we'll get into the importance of big jumps we need this upcoming season from guys like Arnold Ebiketie, Troy Anderson, Matthew Bertrand. Maybe we'll talk about, the possibility of a Brandon Ayuk trade, or at least tell you, pour cold water on it, that possibility. But, at least it's a topic that we can maybe get 5 minutes out of and why it won't happen. But, that's all in store for you as your first listen tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, check out Locked On Sports Today, Locked On Sports Atlanta, Locked On Braves, Locked On Bulldogs, and of course, the incomparable Locked On Hawks hosted by Brad Rowland as your second listen. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.